So the teaching and practices of compassion, we go deeper into the topic, and I want to remind us this world, this quality, compassion, our ability to be willing to be with pain, with suffering of someone else, of ourselves. Oftentimes we freak out when it's us who are under the influence of suffering. Of course, somebody else. So it's this natural movement of the heart that trembles in response to someone's pain. And the emphasis is on natural, because that is the natural response. The opposite of compassion, we can say cruelty, we can say indifference at once. Oftentimes they're intermingle. Yeah. But it's the opposite of letting ourselves be fully. And it's actually caging ourselves in a very painful states of mind, of indifference, of cruelty. And it seems as if we are indifferent towards somebody else, or we cruel to someone else. But just in the same way with the good qualities, like compassion, that are going through us, running through our systems, and we're the first to benefit, it's just the same with the unhelpful, with the painful states of mind, like indifference, like cruelty. We are the first to suffer. Even though we think, it's about the other person, it's actually our heart that is closed. And we suffer from it greatly. We might not even know that. Oftentimes for us human beings, the look is outside, to the other. And we tend to neglect what is going on here. But the teaching and practices that the Buddha was offering, pointing to that one place, here, now, that we embody in this physical form of having a human body, human mind. I've talked to you about the warehouse of seeds. And in this warehouse, we have all the potentials possible for human beings. And it's so much about watering the seeds that are conducive to our well-being, to our liberation, far more than well-being. Well-being is just the beginning. A nice beginning, but just the first baby step. We can go all the way, all of us, to full liberation, endless liberation. And one of the ways in which we support ourselves on this path is by cultivating the qualities, the potential, the seeds that are conducive to freedom. Compassion is one major quality. It's one of the 4 divine abodes. With friendship and love, which is the first one, and joy, appreciative joy or sympathetic joy, the third one. And the fourth would be equanimity, deep balance of the inner world. They all intertwine. They all have some areas of connection between them. And when we take a good look at compassion, maybe you can imagine a situation in which somebody really needs your help, or she or he are going through painful time in their lives or suffering. Take someone you know oftentimes what keeps our compassion from manifesting is the fear. The fear that we will drown with that person, that it will be too much for us. The burden is too heavy. And we somehow imagine that we have to hold all this suffering ourselves. And that's what compassion is all about. Well, it's not. There is a beautiful saying in Zen about mountains. A mountain is not heavy, they say, unless you try to lift it. A mountain is not heavy unless you try to lift it. Please don't lift mountains. And sometimes suffering can feel like a huge mountain. And the first thing we would maybe think we should do is to alleviate suffering, right? To lift this mountain off of somebody else. And this is already, the thought is making us think it's impossible. We can't do it. We don't even try. But actually, compassion is a different inner movement. It asks us to be present with, to dare to be with. It's a huge movement. And it takes fear along with it. It's not that we have to conquer fear and only then we can spread compassion. Only when we'll be perfect, grown-ups, very good meditators, better people, whatever you may think. No. Compassion is now here as we are. Broken, partial, sometimes blind, sometimes heart closed. So what? If we wait until we're perfect, we can wait forever. Not a good idea. But actually, when we just say yes to this beautiful movement of the heart, with our fears, if this is what is happening, with our judgments on ourselves, others, the world, whatever, if this is what is happening, this very act of saying yes and the willingness to meet the other pain and suffering is what is doing the trick and getting us closer, so to speak, to our fullest potential, making our hearts bigger, softer, wiser, and as a result, making our life more full, more rich, more lovely. So it is a lovely quality. I just love this word. And when it's cultivated in us, more and more it attracts, like magnet, more qualities that are in its neighborhood, like kindness, like clarity, like generosity, like love. If you want love in your life, please give it. The hugging universal mother, Amma, known as Amma, the Indian guru woman, has this beautiful sentence. She says, the love that you receive equals the love that you give. Again, it passes through us, firstly, and then, obviously, to the others. So I just love this image of Kuan Yin, the goddess of compassion. She has this beautiful female figure. You might have seen her. There's a beautiful statue of her in the dining hall. And she just sits like this. You saw this posture? Like this. And sometimes she has 1,000 arms. And each arm has a hand, and in the middle of the palm of the hand there is an eye. So she sees everything. She sees all the suffering in the world that she's attending, because the hands symbolizes the action. Sometimes, as we spoke before, compassion would require for us to act, to do something. Not just sit there, do something. Maybe that's the thing that scares us the most about compassion, that we'll have to move out of our comfort zone. Other times, compassion actually tells us, no, now it's time to stay stable, stay steady. Be fully present. It's not the time to move. Don't just do something, sit there. The opposite. When we talk about compassion, and I've mentioned the obvious enemy, it's called in the tradition of compassion, which is cruelty or indifference, we have to know the close enemy, the one that is really sometimes camouflaging itself as compassion, but it's not the real deal, just looks like it. And this is pity. When we pity someone, so there is some compassion in it, yes. It's not like clear cut, this is pity, this is compassion. They're intermingled, of course, but most of it actually doesn't come out of love or care, it comes out of fear. Check it out in your own experience. When we find ourselves in a, I don't know, in a red light, and there's somebody coming with this plastic cup and try to collect some money from the drivers that are standing, waiting for the light to change, and immediately we tag this person as a beggar. This is a beggar. Immediately, with the tag, there's a relationship that is starting between us and our image and views and ideas and opinions on beggars. And usually, check it out, there's something about this encounter that triggers some kind of fear to different degrees, and rejection and resentment. And something in us just goes, yeah, like this. And maybe we will choose, I'm doing this because it's not really a free choice, to just stare ahead and do nothing. Usually it's not a free choice because it comes out of our habit patterns, our conditionings, our culture, our views that are standing between us and this person. And sometimes we will be kind enough to roll down the window and put a few pennies, or whatever your money is, in this plastic box that is held by a hand that is attached to this body of what we name a beggar. And often we won't even look at them. It will be too much. Is it? It's like, okay, I've done my duty, which is beautiful. It's much better than just indifference or hostility, or it's already far better. There's already kindness and some degree of compassion with the pity and some generosity. Yes, of course, it's far better than ignoring, or worse than ignoring. But still, we're in the business of taking a deep, deep look inside to see what binds us and what can free us and liberates us. And we can see that fear is running the show. And the fear tells us that she or he are different than us. They are the other. They are the strangers. Something in us, maybe some kind of ancient mechanism, look at the other as a threat. And there is a beautiful saying by Mother Teresa, who said once that the problem with the world is that we are drawing the circle of our family too close, too tight, too small. And what will happen to our lives and our experience and also the others if we are willing to open up and include more people that before were the others and strangers, and them into the us, into this family. And maybe even so big to include everyone, the family of all living beings. So if we come back to this scene with the beggar, what is this fear from? What it is telling us? And I once heard a story about a practitioner. It was actually in New York, that they were working with people who were living in the street, beggars. And she told this story that she had her personal beggar. Like she was walking every day to work, and she was passing by this beggar of hers and giving him whatever, a quarter or something, and and after some time, there was a recognition, after days have passed, and every morning, or almost every morning, this scenario happened, and she started to notice that, yes, she's giving him the money, but she doesn't really look at him. There's some kind of a side glance. She's like, good morning, and she investigated it in her meditation. And something really interesting happened, and she discovered that she went along with her fear. She saw that her turning half a blind eye towards this person has to do with fear. And she asked herself, what is the fear about? And then she went on with imagining what would happen actually if she would have looked at him. Okay, so next morning she tried and actually said good morning to him, and he was very happy and said good morning to her. And then the fear got even stronger, and then she worked with it more and more, and she realized that the story in her mind was that if she becomes more and more friendly with this person that was a beggar and now is a person, and every day she passes by and it's winter in New York and it's super cold, and she gives this quarter and the man says thank you and how are you today and this and that, and relationship start forming. Not a relationship between a very privileged white woman and a beggar, but a relationship between two people. More and more, the common denominator of being human got stronger and stronger. And the fear was that, well, if I look him in the eyes, and we became much more friendly in a way, and we know each other, how can I let him sleep in the street? I'll have to take him in to my living room. I'll set up a bed for him and all that. And this thought was really terrible for her. No, I don't want to do it. So I better ignore him completely. Well, guys, between completely ignoring someone and giving the whole of the apartment to him or her. There's many, many, many places in between. But I think this story goes to tell about the very natural movement of the heart that wants to open up and then shrinks back. We have to take care with this way in which it's all too easy not to look. Not to look. It's very understandable. Yes, it's scary. Yes, it's too much. Yes, we'll be swept off our feet. But what about trust? Can we trust, actually, that along with compassion we'll have the stability and the care also for ourselves? So I love to quote a dear friend of mine, a Dharma teacher, is a colleague, Charles Genoux, who once I heard him said he spent a long time in India, and we were talking about beggars, and he said, well, you cannot possibly give to all the beggars you meet. Yeah, especially not in India, but maybe everywhere. You cannot give to all the beggars you meet, but you can meet all the beggars you meet. What does it mean to meet, to really, really allow ourselves to meet what we call beggars? So sometimes the willingness to meet asks us to take a deeper look, and maybe even to start to realize and understand the different reasons for somebody's behavior. There where compassion and wisdom are actually two sides of the same coin. And it's like this bird that we talked about, that we are, that one wing is insight and the other one is the heart qualities, compassion. It has to come together, and actually it does. It does. When we really see someone deeply, when we are willing to see someone deeply, not through our lens, not through our views and opinions and judgments and closeness, but really to have a deep look on someone, then wisdom comes, compassion comes, and they support each other mutually. So there is an ancient saying by Shantideva: whoever wants to protect himself and to protect others, she or he can practice the mystery of exchanging self with others. Shantideva, the mystery of exchanging self with others. Because again, that's the movement of protection. I need to protect here. This is the most important thing, me. And then we miss the point because we hurt ourselves in that way. But what can make possible when we actually do something that is radically different? We are in the business of radical compassion now. And for this radical compassion to flow, as it can flow, we need to do something radical with our perception and our mind. You understand? It's like, so exchanging self with others is a very ancient practice from Shantideva, Tibetan Buddhism, centuries ago. So it was true then, and it's true now. When we can step out of this small mind that cares only about I, me, mine, such horizons can open up for us. And this is already touches upon this wisdom in actually many traditions. The American Indian tradition, for example, there is a prayer: Dear Creator, let me not criticize another until I walked a mile in their moccasins. Yeah. dear Creator, let me not criticize another until I walked a mile in their moccasins. Yeah. So the ability to understand the other, not be stuck in the label of different, other, stranger, but how would it be to put ourselves in their shoes, so to speak, or moccasins, for that matter. And then maybe something can shift in our perception, which is the key for transformation. It's the perception that locks us in a certain states of mind and heart that are painful. They go hand in hand with our views and perception, in the way we perceive the world. When we look through the lens of the small me, we are bound to suffer. I can say, try it, guys, but everybody's doing it anyway. So maybe try something different. Like Rumi has this one-liner, the Sufi poet from 14th century. Try something different. Surrender. Well, maybe not today. Come tomorrow. I'll try tomorrow. No. And then we never do it. We forget. Something else comes. Yeah. Very important. We have to look at our emails. Do this phone call. Forget all about the depth of our being and what locks us and what can liberate us. So, when we are plunging into this practice of putting ourselves in the shoes of the other, or just in her or his place, something magical can happen to our hearts. And it's not about thinking so much. It's like the movement of the heart comes here naturally. And maybe we might even discover that we are not so different as we thought we are from the others. That given the same circumstances as they had, that some of them we know, most of them we never know, but given the same circumstances, who knows? How would we act and behave? So, cultivating compassion, it's a call of cultivating openness and courage and flexibility and changing point of view. One of my beloved teachers, he was actually the teacher of my teacher in India. His name was Nisargadatta Maharaj. Beautiful, wise being, was talking about love in one of his talks. And he said, changing point of view. This is what I call love. Can you imagine changing our point of view? Most of the time we don't even know we have a point of view. We think this is truth, this is reality. This is it, right? Reality. Yeah, making something real. But view and reality are two different things. And the Buddha said about it, how do you protect the truth? You say, this is a view. Meaning we do not want to confuse view with truth. In other words, when we take a good look inside, we can start to see the different views and opinions we have on others, on ourselves, on the world. Can we call it a view? It's just a view. Can we have a fresh look at someone else? Can we accommodate the understanding that what we see right now about the other person is just a fraction of who they are? we'll never know the full story. And if we knew, whoa, that would have moved our hearts so deeply. Like this sentence of the historian Longfellow, everyone you'll meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind always. So can we keep in mind these? These are all helpful steps towards cultivating compassion. It's not just dawning on us out of the blue just because we want to do it. It's great that we want to do it, but how? Yeah. So it's bordering on our understanding as well, and on our willingness to step forward and say, yes, I'm willing to change here. Maybe just a little bit. Maybe just a little bit. I remember years ago when I was visiting Mumbai a lot because of my teacher there. There was, in one of the streets I used to walk many times, there was this little boy who was a beggar. You know, it's quite common in India. Children that are begging, and there are many stories and many reasons. But this child was special because not only was he a beggar, and I never saw him with any adult around, he was also a child with special needs. So he couldn't speak, and I think he was mentally slow, and he had the most beautiful smile, and he would approach the tourists with, with his hand, smiling. He could not speak, he wouldn't speak, but just smiling, and usually people just, ignore. Fear is there, very normal, yeah, understandable. And I remember seeing this movement in myself at the beginning. It's like, oh no, I can't get into it. It's too much suffering, too many children in the street. What will happen if I give everyone? What will happen if I open my heart to this boy? A little bit similar to the story of that woman. But as a practice, I said, I'll do it anyway. Let's see what will happen. And I find myself actually looking for him and looking for the contact. And maybe even touching him on the head, patting him on the head sometimes, or giving him a hand, and we were walking hand in hand in the street. Other times we were sitting in a restaurant, eating together. And very quickly, he stopped being this beggar boy for me, and it became just this beautiful human being that we share a piece of life together. And it's not about how much we give at all, but how about just a smile, just a recognition, just the willingness to be there, show up in our humanity. That's already a huge step forward. I want to speak also about self-compassion. It goes hand in hand. Compassion is compassion, whether we direct it outwards or inward. And so often, this is the case. It's a strange way we are built as human beings, but the person that we least feel like giving compassion to is ourselves. Why? Why? Why is it like that? I'm not talking about self-pity. Self-pity is a completely different opera. Self-pity is something that is building up our ego, our small, confined little self, and cage us. No self-pity is one of the best mantras I know, by the way. No self-pity, whatever happens. But self-compassion, guys, it's a different story. And so often we just don't even entertain the thought of the possibility to do that. Why? Why? What went wrong in the evolution? So we take a good look at sometimes some of the reason we might know why we don't do it, why it's hard for us even to think about it. And we might find lots of views and opinions and ideas that we have about ourselves and about what will happen if we be compassionate towards ourselves. Maybe we'll become lazy. Maybe we'll sink deep in self-pity. Maybe we are not worthy of compassion, right? We are such a, I don't know what, filling the blanks, horrible people that why waste compassion on us? Yeah, maybe that's the view. Very painful and wrong. This is the wrong view. Everyone deserves compassion. Everyone deserves our compassion, including ourselves. And there was a researcher, Christine Neff, who made this a really beautiful piece of work about self-compassion. She tried to put it into questionnaires, and she defined self-compassion as directing a certain relationship towards ourselves in times of difficulty. And she built this, she found these three little axes, you might say, that can tell us if the person has or doesn't or doesn't have self-compassion. So the self-compassion entails three main components which actually overlap and mutually interact. The first would be the axis of self-kindness versus self-judgment. Check yourself. What's the percentage? Can we allow ourselves to be kind to ourselves? The Dalai Lama here, his beautiful face are hanging there on the wall, once said when he was asked, what is your religion? You're Buddhist, right? Your religion is Buddhism. And he said, no, my religion is kindness. Are we kind to ourselves? What does it mean to be kind to ourselves? These are really good questions to be with, to discover. And what's this business with self-judgment? Why? Maybe we have a view, hidden or not so hidden, that this is the only way in which we can evolve, grow, become better people. If we'll be really judgmental with ourselves, we will push ourselves towards being better human beings. Well, think again. Judgment, hatred, self-hatred, self-criticism are taking us in the opposite direction. And one of the teachers once said, Sharon Salzberg, who wrote a whole book about the qualities of the heart, about loving kindness and the other qualities, she said, if self-judgment, self-hatred, self-criticism were enlightenment, we will all be free long ago. So it's painful it's a painful path, and it doesn't lead actually to where we want to be. It's going the wrong direction, the opposite direction. And check yourself how you can navigate your life away from self-judgment towards self-kindness. The other axis will be feeling this common humanity versus the feeling of isolation or the perception of isolation. So often, especially in this culture, we might feel isolated, lonely, apart from, not belonging to. And this is a very painful way to live. And the ability we have to actually know that what we are going through right now, whatever it may be in our lives, in our hearts, it's actually part of humanity. We are not the first to go through it, not the last. Actually, we share this common destiny, one might say, with our fellow human beings. It is not just my problem, also. Very unique to me, and I have to hide it and deal with it myself alone. Actually, it's a way in which a part of our humanity is manifesting right now. And it's good to tap in and know that others, just as I suffer in this moment from this specific thing, others share the same. It means I'm not so isolated and alone anymore as I mistakenly think I am. And it's not about rejoicing in others' suffering. It's more about understanding, again, stepping out of the wrong view of isolation. And the third one would be mindfulness versus over-identification. So oftentimes we are sure that what we are going through is just my little business and it belongs to me and I'm the reason for it and I'm to blame for it and it's me and it's mine. Mindfulness helps us to take a healthy space inwardly between us and the problem, us and the situation. So when the problem finally can return to its place of being a situation, a life situation. And we notice with the power of mindfulness that it's not entirely us. That there are many causes and conditions that gave rise to one event, painful event in our life to take place. And it's not my doing and I'm to blame. It's life doing whatever they're doing through me. That's another way to look at it. So the mindfulness helps us to step back from the fire and have a fresh look and understand better, and then we are able to act in a much more wise and compassionate way. So self-kindness versus self-judgment, feeling of common humanity versus isolation, and mindfulness versus over-identification. These are good pointers to remember when we practice. And when compassion is alive in us, and thriving and growing. Actually, and this is another thing they found in researchers, it's really, I find it's really cool, that thing that people found out thousands of years ago and they are working, now we need to bottle them into research. And then we feel, so it means it's really true. Instead of just relying on our experience. But it's also nice, in a way, to have another backup. And there was another researcher called Gilbert who made a lot of work with this topic. And they said that it's really actually healthy. Not that it can be otherwise, but it's now based upon research. And they found areas in the brain that are getting activated when we feel compassion, and these areas are the ones who release oxytocin, which is a very nice feeling, very nice hormone to have instead of stress hormones. So, I mean, of course, it's obvious, but now they found it in research, so even more. It's a good motivation to practice. Yeah, we have like free oxytocin trips instead of this stress. Compassion and wisdom goes hand in hand, and the deeper the compassion, the deeper the understanding, the deeper the wisdom. The truth of it, of the right view, the way things really are, the connection between all of us, the understanding that given a certain situation, we might as well act, if we have been in other person's moccasins, we might as well act just in the same way. So judgment, think again. And there's a beautiful poem I wanted to read to you at the end, and just feel free to relax into your postures right now. It's one of my favorite poems by Thich Nhat Hanh, this beautiful Zen monk, Master. Please call me by my true names. Do not say that I'll depart tomorrow, because even today I still arrive. Look deeply. I arrive in every second, to be a bud on a spring branch, to be a tiny bird with wings still fragile, learning to sing in my new nest, to be a caterpillar in the heart of a flower, to be a jewel hiding itself in a stone. I still arrive in order to laugh and to cry, in order to fear and to hope. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that are alive. I am the mayfly metamorphosing on the surface of the river, and I am the bird which, when spring comes, arrives in time to eat the mayfly. I am the frog swimming happily in the clear water of the pond, and I am also the grass snake who, approaching in silence, feeds itself on the frog. I am the child in Uganda all skin and bones. My legs are thin as bamboo sticks. And I am the arms merchant, selling deadly weapons to Uganda. I am the 12-year-old girl, refugee, on a small boat, who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. And I am the pirate. My heart not yet capable of seeing and loving. I am a member of the Politburo with plenty of power in my hands. And I am a man who has to pay his debt of blood to my people, dying slowly in a forced labor camp. My joy is like spring, so warm it makes flowers bloom in all walks of life. My pain is like a river of tears, so full it fills up the 4 oceans. Please call me by my true names, so I can hear all my cries and my laughs at once, so I can see that my joy and pain are one. Please call me by my true names, so I can wake up, and so the door of my heart can be left open, the door of compassion. Let's sit together with these words. Please keep your heart open, the door of your heart, the door of compassion.